When I was in elementary school, my two best friends, Shin and June, and I built a secret hideout deep in the mountains behind our school. It wasn't just a simple fort. Using scraps of wood and a handful of nails, we built a small cabin large enough for the three of us to sit inside comfortably. To us, it felt like our own private house. After school, we would spend hours there eating snacks, talking about our crushes, reading magazines we probably shouldn't have had, and enjoying the freedom of being away from adults. Two stray dogs had also become part of our little group. They lived around the mountain and often spent their days near our hideout. One summer vacation, we came up with what seemed like the greatest idea in the world. We would spend the night at the hideout. Each of us lied to our parents, claiming we were staying at someone else's house. We pooled together our allowance money and bought snacks, soda, and fireworks. At the time, it felt even more exciting than a school trip. Late that afternoon, we met at school and began the long hike into the mountains. After nearly an hour of climbing, we finally reached our hideout. The two stray dogs greeted us as they always did, running toward us with wagging tails. Everything felt perfect. We spent the evening fishing at a large pond near the cabin. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, we lit our fireworks and laughed while the dogs chased the sparks through the darkness. But when the fireworks ran out and night truly settled over the mountain, everything changed. None of us had ever spent a night there before. There were no streetlights, no houses, no distant sounds of traffic, only darkness. The small flashlight inside the cabin provided barely enough light to see each other's faces. Outside, the forest seemed endless. At first, we tried to ignore it. We ate snacks and talked about school, teachers, and girls we liked. Then we started hearing things. A loud splash from the pond. Something moving through the trees. Rustling sounds in the darkness beyond the cabin walls. Every few minutes, another strange noise would break the silence. Did you hear that? What if there's a bear out there? At first, we joked about it. Soon, nobody was laughing. The cabin was hot, humid, and full of mosquitoes. Sleep was impossible. But what frightened us most wasn't any specific sound. It was the mountain itself. The deeper the night became, the more it felt as if the forest was closing in around us. By 9 o'clock, all three of us regretted coming. After a nervous discussion, we made our decision. We were leaving. Using a flashlight to illuminate the narrow trail, we began our descent through the darkness. For the first few minutes, the two stray dogs ran around us, and their presence made us feel safer. Then they stopped. Without warning, they turned around and disappeared back toward the hideout. Suddenly, we were alone. The trail we knew so well during the day felt completely different at night. It was little more than a narrow animal path winding through the mountain. Nobody spoke. We walked carefully, trying not to slip, listening to every sound around us. Every rustle in the bushes made us tense. Every shadow seemed to move. The only sounds were our footsteps and the pounding of our hearts. Then Shin suddenly grabbed my shoulder. "Someone's there." We froze. Instinctively, we dropped to the ground and switched off the flashlight. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then we heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Crunching through the undergrowth. Not an animal. A person. Peering through the darkness, we finally saw a figure about 30 meters away. The person was climbing deeper into the mountain. A flashlight in one hand. A long stick in the other. Carefully pushing through the brush. At first, we were terrified. But then we realized something. It was only one person. And they were human. The fear that had gripped us moments earlier began to fade. In its place came something far more dangerous. Curiosity. I whispered. "Who do you think that is?" Then I asked the question that changed everything. Should we follow him? The smiles on Shin and June's faces gave me my answer. Using the faint beam of the stranger's flashlight as our guide, we quietly followed him deeper into the mountain. After about 20 minutes, the figure finally stopped. From where we hid, we could barely make out a silhouette. The person set down a backpack and began doing something in the darkness. At first, we thought it might be someone collecting insects or exploring the forest at night. Curiosity got the better of us. We moved closer. Carefully avoiding dry leaves and branches, we crept through the darkness until we were only a short distance away. Then we heard it. Clack. A sharp sound echoed through the trees. Clack. Again. Looking closer, we realized the figure wasn't a man at all. It was a woman. And she was hammering nails into a tree. At that moment, a local legend came rushing back to us. Stories about straw dolls. Curses. Midnight rituals performed deep in the mountains. The woman muttered something under her breath as she worked. It sounded almost like a prayer. Or a chant. Fear finally caught up with me. We should leave, I whispered. But Shin and June wanted to get even closer. Soon we were hiding behind a tree only a few meters away. The woman looked to be around 40 years old. A flashlight and backpack sat beside her while she repeatedly drove nails into photographs attached to the tree. Then everything went wrong. A bark suddenly shattered the silence. The two stray dogs had found us. They stood behind us, wagging their tails as if asking what we were doing. The woman turned. For a brief second, our eyes met. I'll never forget her face. Then she screamed. Not a normal scream. A raw, animal-like shriek. And she charged at us with a hammer in her hand. Shin ran first. June and I followed. I heard footsteps behind me growing closer. Then something grabbed my shoulder. I hit the ground. The woman pinned me beneath her feet. She stared down at me with wide eyes and clenched teeth, trembling with a terrifying intensity. I couldn't move. I couldn't even look away. For what felt like an eternity, I thought she was about to bring the hammer down on my head. Then suddenly, one of the dogs jumped onto her back. The woman stumbled. The second dog rushed in as well. That single moment gave me my chance. I got to my feet and ran. Ahead of me, Shin and June were shining their flashlight and shouting for me to hurry. I didn't look back. I just ran. When we finally escaped the mountain, it was already past midnight. We sprinted all the way to Shin's house, convinced the woman might still be chasing us. Only after we reached safety did we learn what had happened. The dogs had saved my life. According to Shin, the woman had tried to strike me with the hammer as I escaped. One of the dogs leapt at her and took the blow instead. When she tried to continue the chase, the second dog got in her way. Rather than follow us, she turned her rage on them. None of us slept that night. At dawn, we made a decision. We were going back into the mountain. We had to find the dogs. But what we discovered the next morning was far worse than anything we had seen that night. None of us slept that night. After a few hours of restless sleep the next morning, we armed ourselves with a baseball bat and an airsoft gun and returned to the mountain. Part of us hoped the dogs had survived. Part of us feared what we might find. As we approached the tree where we had seen the woman, the atmosphere changed. The bright summer sunlight no longer felt comforting. Then we saw it. Photographs of a small child had been nailed to the tree. But that wasn't what shocked us most. At the base of the tree lay one of the stray dogs. Dead. Its body was covered in blood, and a large nail had been driven into its forehead. None of us could move. The reality of what had happened finally hit us. This wasn't some harmless prank. The woman was dangerous. Trying to convince ourselves that the second dog might still be alive, we ran toward our hideout. When we reached it, something immediately felt wrong. Then we noticed it. A small drawstring bag belonging to June had been nailed to the roof. Dozens of nails held it in place. The woman had found our hideout. Fear gripped all of us. Shin carefully opened the door while June and I stood behind him. Inside was the second dog. Dead. Just like the first. And then we saw something even worse. The walls and floor had been carved with the same message over and over again. Kill June. Kill June. Kill June. Hundreds of times. June froze. Then Shin realized something. June's full name had been written on the bag hanging from the roof. The woman had learned his name, his class, his school year. And if she knew that much, she could find the rest of us too. For the first time, we truly felt trapped. We left the mountain without saying much. None of us wanted to return. And we agreed never to tell anyone what had happened. The less attention we attracted, the safer we thought we'd be. Then summer vacation ended. 2 weeks later, June didn't come to school. Shin and I immediately feared the worst. After class, we went to his house. To our surprise, June was alive. But something about him had changed. He looked exhausted. Pale. Frightened. His mother explained that he had been suffering from a severe rash for over a week. When she left the room, June silently lifted his shirt. His chest, back, and sides were covered in red welts. Then he pointed to one spot on his body. At first, it looked like another rash. But the longer we stared, the more it resembled a face. A woman's face. June looked at us with terrified eyes. "It's her," he whispered. The woman cursed me. Shin immediately shook his head. "There's no such thing as curses." I wanted to believe him. But as we left June's house that day, neither of us felt very convinced. 3 days passed. June still hadn't returned to school. Our teacher said he was suffering from a severe rash, which eased our fears a little. But around the same time, a strange rumor began spreading through the school. Children claimed that a woman wearing a trench coat was standing along the routes to school, silently staring at students one by one. The moment I heard the rumor, my stomach dropped. I had seen her face. Up close. Shin tried to reassure me. It was dark that night. Even if she saw us, she probably doesn't remember. I wanted to believe him. Still, I was too scared to walk home alone, so Shin started accompanying me after school. For several days, nothing happened. Then, about a week later, Shin and I visited June again. His rash had improved, but he insisted that the mark on his side was getting larger. He still believed the woman had cursed him. Neither of us knew what to say. A few days later, everything changed. After school, Shin and I were walking with 2 classmates when one of them suddenly pointed ahead. "Hey, isn't that the trench coat lady?" My heart stopped. Standing alone on the sidewalk was a woman in a trench coat, head lowered, completely motionless. As we approached, Shin quietly warned us, "Don't make eye contact." 5 meters away, the woman slowly raised her head. She looked at each of us. Then her eyes moved to our chests. Our name tags. She was reading them. Instantly, I recognized her. It was the woman from the mountain. The same face. The same eyes. I forced myself to keep walking. No one spoke. The seconds felt endless. Then one of our classmates laughed nervously and made a joke about her. I turned around. The woman was still staring at us. At me. Her expressionless face slowly twisted into a smile. A horrible smile. My blood ran cold. She remembered. I knew it. The moment we turned the corner and disappeared from sight, I grabbed Shin's arm. "We have to leave." We ran. Only after putting distance between ourselves and the woman did we stop. "She knows who we are," I said. She was checking our names. For the first time, even Shin looked worried. Then he said something neither of us wanted to admit. "We need to go to the police." There was only one problem. We had no proof. Then Shin reminded me of the mountain. The nailed photographs. The dead dogs. The messages carved into our hideout. If we could photograph everything, maybe the police would finally believe us. I didn't want to go back. Not after what had happened. But we were out of options. The next afternoon, after school, Shin and I returned to the entrance of the mountain. Neither of us wanted to go. The memories of that night, the woman, the nails, and the fate of the two stray dogs, kept replaying in my head. Without saying much, Shin pulled out a disposable camera and started running up the trail. I followed. When we reached the place where everything had happened, the silence felt unbearable. The remains of one of the dogs were still there. A rusty nail still protruded from its skull. Shin photographed everything. Then we noticed something new. Another photograph had been nailed to the tree. A second picture of a young girl. Someone had returned recently. The woman was still coming here. We hurried toward our secret hideout. Then we realized something was wrong. The roof was gone. The entire structure had been destroyed. Our hideout, the place we had built with our own hands, had been reduced to a pile of broken boards. Among the wreckage, we found the remains of the other dog. And the message carved into the wood was still there. June must die. Shin photographed everything. Then we ran. If the police saw these pictures, they would have to believe us. At least, that's what we thought. We developed the film and rushed to the nearest police box. Breathless, we told the officer everything. The woman. The mountain. The dead dogs. The threats. The photographs. The officer listened politely. Then he asked a question neither of us wanted to hear. Have you told your parents? Again and again, he asked about our parents, our teacher, and our home addresses. It felt like he wasn't listening at all. Worse, the photographs weren't nearly as convincing as we thought. The remains were so badly decomposed that the officer couldn't even tell what he was looking at. To him, it looked like nothing more than strange photographs brought in by two frightened kids. Panic set in. We became convinced he would call our parents before believing a word we said. So we ran. Right out of the police box. Outside, we sat on the roadside, exhausted. Our last hope was gone. The police couldn't help us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Shin finally said something. If she really wanted to hurt us, why hasn't she? The question lingered in the air. She knew our names. She had destroyed the hideout. Yet she hadn't come after us. Maybe she was searching for someone else. Maybe she had already forgotten us. Maybe we had terrified ourselves for nothing. The more we talked, the more we wanted to believe it. Eventually, we even started laughing. Making jokes. Mocking the woman. Pretending we weren't afraid anymore. As evening fell, we headed home. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little relief. I kept repeating the same thought to myself. She's forgotten about us. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. That night, the sky was perfectly clear, filled with countless stars. As I headed home, I kept telling myself to forget about the middle-aged woman and move on. Then I heard it. Another set of footsteps mixed with my own. I turned around several times, but nobody was there. At least, that's what I thought. A moment later, I spotted a figure crouching behind a parked scooter. Under the moonlight, only one detail stood out clearly. A long coat. My blood ran cold. It was her. I took off running. Home was only a short distance away, but if I ran straight inside, she would know where I lived. So I sprinted past my house and wandered through the neighborhood, taking random turns to shake her off. After several minutes, the footsteps disappeared. Only then did I return home, rush inside, and lock the door. But the nightmare wasn't over. A shadow appeared behind the frosted glass of my front door. The woman was standing just outside. I froze. She remained motionless for several moments before slowly testing the doorknob. Finding it locked, she crouched down and pressed her ear against the door. She was listening, trying to determine whether someone was inside. Eventually, she stepped backward and disappeared from view. But I couldn't move. Had she really left? Or was she still lurking around the house? Keeping every light off, I called Shin. After hearing what happened, he spoke calmly. "Check every lock in the house. I'll handle the rest." After hanging up, I moved through the dark house, checking windows and doors one by one. Then I reached the Japanese-style room facing the backyard. And froze. A silhouette was pressed against the window. It was the woman. Like a lizard clinging to glass, she pressed her face against the window and peered inside. Then she began dragging her fingers across the glass. A horrible scraping sound echoed through the silent house. I crouched down, unable to scream. Suddenly, she turned and sprinted away. Moments later, flashing red lights appeared outside. Shin had called the police and reported a suspicious person near my house. The patrol car wasn't there by chance. A short time later, Shin called again. "You okay?" She was looking through my window, but she ran away. I called the police. "You need to tell your parents now." I didn't argue. 30 minutes later, my mother came home. The moment I saw her face, all the fear I'd been holding back came rushing out. I broke down crying. Then I told my parents everything, from the night in the mountain to the woman appearing outside our home. My father examined the window and found deep scratches carved into the glass. To me, they looked like marks made by a large nail. My parents didn't scold me. My mother hugged me, and my father immediately called the police. Soon, officers and forensic investigators arrived. I told them everything. The next day, police planned to search the mountain and promised increased patrols around our neighborhood. That night, for the first time in years, I slept in the same room as my parents. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face again. The next morning, I was told to stay home from school. My mother took the day off, and an uneasy silence filled the house. Around noon, a heavy thud suddenly struck the outside wall. When I looked out the window, I froze. A large dead frog, its body torn open, lay in our yard. My mother immediately called the police. I already knew who had done it. That woman. She was watching us. The police had already searched the mountain and confirmed the dead dogs, the nailed photographs, and the remains of our secret hideout. "We'll catch whoever did this," they promised. But that very night, something happened. Past 11 p.m., while my family slept together in the same room, a loud shout exploded from outside the front door. "Hey!" Then came a familiar scream. The woman. A police patrol had caught her in front of our house. She was trying to start a fire at our entrance. When I finally stepped outside, officers were pinning her to the ground. Her eyes were bloodshot as she stared directly at me. "You too, you're making me suffer," she screamed over and over. Among the newspapers she had prepared for the fire, police discovered a wooden board. Carved into it was my full name. And beneath it, "Burned to death." A chill ran through my entire body. If the police had arrived only a few minutes later, I didn't want to imagine what might have happened. Then the officers explained who she really was. 2 years earlier, she had lost both her husband and son in a traffic accident. The accident happened when a young girl ran into the road. Her family died trying to avoid hitting that girl. The girl survived unharmed. Since then, the woman had become obsessed with blaming her. The photographs nailed to the trees in the mountain were pictures of that same girl. Police already knew about her history. But hearing the truth didn't make me feel relieved. It made me feel worse. Because if someone could hold on to hatred that deeply for years, how could I be sure this was truly the end? At this point, you might think the nightmare was finally over. But according to the witness, the truly disturbing events were only beginning. We'll continue with part 2. If you enjoyed Japanese horror stories like this, consider subscribing. And if this story gave you chills, leave a like.